Chapter 7 The great sage escapes from the 8 trigrams furnace. The mind ape is fixed beneath 5 elements. Mountain wealth and honor, glory and fame, are predetermined by fate. No one should act against conscience to covet any of them. Far-going and deep are the good results of true enlightenment and loyalty. Heaven punishes all wild and wicked deeds, if not at once then later on. Ask the Lord of the East the reason why disasters now strike him. It is because his ambition was high, his plans far-reaching, he did not respect authority, and he smashed convention. The story goes on to tell how the great sage equaling heaven was escorted by the hosts of heavenly soldiers to the demon beheading tower, and tied to the demon subduing pillar. They hacked at him with sabers, sliced at him with axes, lunged at him with spears and cut at him with swords, but they were unable to inflict a single wound on him. The Southern Dipper angrily ordered all the gods of the Department of Fire to set him alight and burn him up, but he would not ignite. He told the gods of the Department of Thunder to nail splinters of thunder into him, but however hard they tried they could not harm a hair of his body. The strong-armed demon king, and the rest of them then reported this to the throne. "Your Majesty," they said, "this great sage has learned somewhere or other how to protect himself by magic." Journey to the West. Chapter 786. Although your subjects have hacked at him with sabers, sliced at him with axes, struck at him with thunder and tried to burn him with fire, we have not been able to harm a hair of his body. What are we to do? How can we deal with a wretch like this? The Jade Emperor asked, and the Lord Lao Zi replied to this in a memorial. That monkey has eaten the peaches of immortality, drunk the imperial liquor, and stolen the pills of elixir. He swallowed those 5 gourds of pills of mine, fresh ones and mature ones alike. Now we have used the fire of samadhi on him, which has tempered his body, and made it a diamond one that cannot be harmed. The best course would be to let me take him and put him in my 8 trigrams furnace, where I can refine out my elixir with the civil and martial fire, and reduce him to ashes at the same time. The Jade Emperor then ordered the 6 Dings and the 6 Jias to untie him, and hand him over to the Lord Lao Zi, who took him away in obedience to the imperial decree. At the same time the Jade Emperor summoned the illustrious sage Erlang to his presence and rewarded him with 100 golden flowers, 100 jars of imperial liquor, 100 pills of elixir, rare jewels, lustrous pearls, brocade, embroidery, and other gifts to share with his sworn brothers. The true Lord Erlang thanked him for his bounty and returned to Guangjiankao. When he reached the Tushita Palace, Lord Lao Zi had the great sage untied, took the hook from his collarbone, pushed him into the 8 trigrams furnace, and ordered the priests in charge of it and the fire boys to fan the fire up to refine him. Now this furnace was made up of the 8 trigrams Qian, Kan, Zhen, Sun, Li, Kun, and Dui. So he squeezed himself into the palace of Sun, as sun was the wind, and where there was wind there could be no fire. All that happened was that the wind stirred up the smoke, which made both his eyes red, and left him somewhat blind with the illness called fire eyes with golden pupils. Time soon passed, and without him realizing it the 7 times 7, or 49, days had passed, and Lord Lao Zi's fire had reached the required temperature and burned for long enough. One day the furnace was opened for the elixir to be taken out. The great sage, who was shielding his eyes with both hands and wiping away his tears, heard a noise at the top of the furnace. He looked hard and saw daylight, and unable to stand being in there a moment longer, leapt out of the furnace, kicked it over with a crash, and was off. In the ensuing chaos the fire boys, the keepers of the furnace, the Dings and the Jias all tried to grab him, but he knocked them all down. He was like a white-browed tiger gone berserk, a single-horned dragon raving mad. Lord Lao Zi rushed up to seize him, but was thrown head over heels as the great sage freed himself. He took the as-you-will cudgel from his ear, and shook it in the wind till it was thick as a bowl, and once more created total chaos in the palace of heaven, not caring in the least what he did. He laid about him to such effect that the 9 bright shiners shut their windows and doors, and not a sign was to be seen of the 4 heavenly kings. Marvelous monkey spirit. As the poem has it, his primordial body matches an earlier heaven, completely natural throughout 10,000 ages. Vast and passive, blended with the great monad. Always immobile, known as the prime mystery. After so much refining in the furnace, he is not lead or mercury. Journey to the West. Chapter 787. Having lived long outside the ordinary, he is a natural immortal. His changes are inexhaustible, and still he has more, so say nothing about the 3 refuges or 5 abstentions. Another poem says, a single point of magic light can fill the whole of space, likewise that staff of his, longer or shorter, depending on his needs, upright or horizontal, it can shrink or grow. Yet another poem runs, to the ape's immortal body is matched a human mind, that the mind is an ape is deeply meaningful. It was quite true that the great sage equaled heaven, the appointment as protector of the horse showed no discernment. Horse and ape together make mind and thought, bind them tightly together, and do not seek elsewhere. When all phenomena are reduced to truth they follow a single pattern, like the Tathagata reaching nirvana under the 2 trees. This time the Monkey King made no distinctions between high and humble as he laid about him to east and west with his iron club. Not a single god opposed him. He fought his way into the hall of universal brightness outside the hall of miraculous mist, where the kingly spirit officer, the lieutenant of the helpful sage and true lord, fortunately was on duty. When he saw the great sage charging around he took up his golden mace and went forward to resist him. Journey to the West. Chapter 788. Where are you going, damned monkey? He asked. If you go wild you'll have me to deal with. The great sage was not in a position to argue with him, so he raised his cudgel to strike him. The spirit officer lifted his mace and advanced to meet him. It was a fine fight. Great was the fame of the brave and loyal officer, evil the name of the rebel who bullied heaven. The low one and the good one were well matched, valiant heroes fighting each other. Vicious the iron cudgel, quick the golden mace. Both were straight, merciless, and terrible. One of them is a deity formed from the great monad thunder, the other is the monkey spirit, the great sage equaling heaven. With golden mace or iron cudgel each is a master, both are weapons from the palaces of the gods. Today they show their might in the hall of miraculous mist, a wonderful display of courage and skill. One in his folly wanting to capture the palace of the Dipper and the Bull, the other exerting all his strength to support the world of the gods. The fight is too hard to allow the use of magic, as mace and cudgel struggle without result. As they fought together without either of them emerging as victor, the true lord sent an officer with a message to the Thunder Palace ordering the 36 Thunder Generals to surround the great sage. Although they all fought with the utmost ferocity, the great sage was not in the least frightened, and parried and blocked to left and right with his as you will cudgel, resisting his opponents in front and behind. Before long he found that the pressure was too great from the sabers, spears, swords, halberds, clubs, maces, claws and ropes, hammer pole axes, battle axes, grabs, pen and hooks, and moon-shaped bills of the Thunder Generals, so he shook himself and grew 3 heads and 6 arms. Then he shook his as you will cudgel and changed it into 3 cudgels, and wielding the 3 cudgels in his 6 hands he flew round and round inside the encirclement like a spinning wheel. None of the Thunder Generals could get anywhere near. Journey to the West. Chapter 789. Him. Indeed. Perfectly round, gleaming bright, how can men learn to live forever? He can enter fire without being burned, and go in the water but not be drowned. He is as bright as a money pearl, swords and spears cannot harm him. He is capable of good and capable of evil, when faced with the choice between good and evil he might do either. If he is good he becomes a Buddha or an immortal, if bad, he grows fur and horns. With his boundless transformations he wrecked the heavenly palace, nor can Thunder Generals and divine troops take him. Although the gods had the great sage cornered, they were unable to get near him. The noise of the shouting and the fighting had already alarmed the Jade Emperor, who ordered the miracle official Yi to go to the west with the helpful sage and true lord, and asked the Buddha to subdue him. When these 2 sages received the order they went to the wonderful land of the miraculous mountain, where they offered their greetings to the 4 Vajrapanis and 8 Bodhisattvas before the Thunder Monastery, and asked them to pass on their massage. The gods went to the foot of the lotus seat to inform the Tathagata, who invited the two sages to his presence. When the sages had performed the threefold obeisance to the Buddha, they stood in attendance below the throne. "Why has the Jade Emperor troubled you two sages to come here?" asked the Buddha. "A monkey," they reported, "who was born on the mountain of flowers and fruit, has used his magic powers to unite all the monkeys and throw the world into confusion." The Jade Emperor sent down an edict of amnesty and appointed him protector of the horses, but this was not good enough for him, so he left heaven again. When Heavenly King Li and Prince Neza were unsuccessful in their attempt to capture him, the Jade Emperor sent down another amnesty, with his appointment as a great sage equaling heaven. At first, this appointment. Journey to the West. Chapter 790. Was purely nominal, but later he was told to look after the peach orchard. But he stole the peaches and then went to the jade pool, where he stole the delicacies and the liquor and wrecked the banquet. In his drunkenness he staggered into the Tushita palace, stole Lord Laozi's pills of immortality, and left heaven again. The Jade Emperor sent 100,000 heavenly troops, but they were still unable to subdue him. Then Guanyin recommended the true Lord Erlang and his sworn brothers to go after the monkey, and he used many a transformation until he was finally able to capture the monkey after the Lord Laozi hit him with his diamond jade. The monkey was then taken to the imperial presence, and the order for his execution was given. But although he was hacked at with sabers, chopped at with axes, burned with fire, and struck with thunder, none of this did him any damage, so Lord Laozi requested permission to take him away and refine him with fire. But when the cauldron was opened after 49 days, he jumped out of the 8 trigrams furnace, rooted the heavenly troops, and went straight to the Hall of Universal Brightness in front of the Hall of Miraculous Mist. Here he has been stopped and engaged in fierce combat by the kingly spirit officer, the lieutenant of the helpful sage, and true Lord Erlang. Thunder generals have been sent there to encircle him, but no one has been able to get close to him. In this crisis, the Jade Emperor makes a special appeal to you, the Tathagata, to save his throne. On hearing this, the Tathagata said to the assembled bodhisattvas, "You stay here quietly in this Dharma hall, and behave yourselves in your seats of meditation, while I go to deal with the demon and save the throne." Telling the Venerable Ananda and the Venerable Kasyapa to accompany him, the Tathagata left the Thunder Monastery and went straight to the gate of the Hall of Miraculous Mist, where his ears were shaken by the sound of shouting as the 36 thunder generals surrounded the great sage. The Buddha issued a decree that ran, "Tell the thunder generals to stop fighting, open up their camp, and call on that great sage to come out, so that I may ask him what divine powers he has." The generals then withdrew, whereupon the great sage put away his magic appearance and came forward in his own body. He was in a raging temper as he asked, "Where are you from? You are a good man. You've got nerve, stopping the fighting and questioning me." "I am the Venerable Sakyamuni from the western land of perfect bliss," replied the Buddha with a smile. "I have heard of your wild and boorish behavior, and of your repeated rebellions against heaven, and I would like to know where you were born, when you found the way, and why you have been so ferocious." "I am," the great sage said, "a miracle-working immortal born of heaven and earth. An old ape from the mountain of flowers and fruit. My home is in the water curtain cave. I sought friends and teachers and became aware of the great mystery. I have practiced many a method for obtaining eternal life. Infinite are the transformations I have learned." Journey to the West. Chapter 791. That is why I found the mortal world too cramped, and decided to live in the jade heaven. None can reign forever in the Hall of Miraculous Mist. Kings throughout history have had to pass on their power. The strong should be honored, he should give way to me. This is the only reason I wage my heroic fight. The Buddha laughed mockingly. "You wretch! You are only a monkey spirit, and you have the effrontery to want to grab the throne of the Jade Emperor. He has trained himself since childhood, and suffered hardship for 1,750 kalpas. Each kalpa is 129,600 years, so you can work out for yourself how long it has taken him to be able to enjoy this great and infinite way. But you are a beast who has only just become a man for the first time. How dare you talk so big? You're not human, not even human. I'll shorten your lifespan, accept my teaching at once and stop talking such nonsense. Otherwise you'll be in for trouble and your life will very shortly be over, and that will be so much the worse for your original form too. Although he has trained himself for a long time, ever since he was a child, he still has no right to occupy this place forever, the great sage said. As the saying goes, emperors are made by turn, next year it may be me. If he can be persuaded to move out and make heaven over to me, that'll be fine. But if he doesn't abdicate in my favor, I'll most certainly make things hot for him, and he'll never know peace and quiet again. What have you got, besides immortality and the ability to transform yourself, that gives you the nerve to try to seize the heavenly palace? The Buddha asked. I can do many tricks indeed, the great sage replied. I can perform 72 transformations, and I can preserve my youth for 10,000 kalpas. I can ride a somersault cloud that takes me 36,000 miles at a single jump. So why shouldn't I sit on the throne of heaven? I'll have a wager with you then, said the Buddha. If you're clever enough to get out of my right hand with a single somersault, you will be the winner, and there will be no more need for weapons or fighting. I shall invite the Jade Emperor to come and live in the west and abdicate the heavenly palace to you. But if you can't get out of the palm of my hand, you will have to go down to the world below as a devil and train yourself for several more kalpas before coming to argue about it again. When he heard this offer, the great sage smiled to himself and thought, this Buddha is a complete idiot. I can cover 36,000 miles with a somersault, so how could I fail to jump out of the palm of his hand, which is less than a foot across? With this in his mind, he asked eagerly, do you guarantee that yourself? Journey to the West. Chapter 792. Yes, yes, the Buddha replied, and he stretched out his right hand, which seemed to be about the size of a lotus leaf. Putting away his as you will cudgel, the great sage summoned up all his divine powers, jumped into the palm of the Buddha's hand and said, I'm off. Watch him as he goes like a streak of light and disappears completely. The Buddha, who was watching him with his wise eyes, saw the Monkey King whirling forward like a windmill, and not stopping until he saw 5 flesh-pink pillars topped by dark vapors. This is the end of the road, he said, so now I'll go back. The Buddha will be witness, and the hall of miraculous mist will be mine. Then he thought again, wait a moment. I'll leave my mark here to prove my case when I talk to the Buddha. He pulled out a hair, breathed on it with his magic breath, and shouted, change. It turned into a writing brush dipped in ink, and with it he wrote the great sage equaling heaven was here in big letters on the middle pillar. When that was done, he put the hair back on, and not standing on his dignity, made a pool of monkey piss at the foot of the pillar. Then he turned his somersault round, and went back to where he had started from. I went, and now I'm back. Tell the Jade Emperor to hand the heavenly palace over to me, he said, standing in the Buddha's palm. I've got you, you piss spirit of a monkey, roared the Buddha at him. You never left the palm of my hand. You're wrong there, the great sage replied. I went to the farthest point of heaven, where I saw 5 flesh-pink pillars topped by dark vapors. I left my mark there, do you dare come and see it with me? There's no need to go. Just look down. The great sage looked down with his fire eyes with golden pupils to see the words, the great sage equaling heaven was here, written on the middle finger of the Buddha's right hand. The stink of monkey piss rose from the fold at the bottom of the finger. What a thing to happen, exclaimed the great sage in astonishment. I wrote this on one of the pillars supporting the sky, so how can it be on his finger now? He must have used divination to know what I was going to do. I don't believe it. I refuse to believe it. I'll go there and come back again. The dear great sage hurriedly braced himself to jump, but the Buddha turned his hand over and pushed the Monkey King out through the western gate of heaven. He turned his 5 fingers into a mountain chain belonging to the elements metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, renamed them the 5 elements mountain, and gently held him down. All the thunder gods and the disciples Ananda and Kajyapa put their hands together to praise the Buddha. Wonderful, wonderful. An egg learned to be a man, cultivated his conduct, and achieved the way. Heaven had been undisturbed for the 1,000 kalpas. Until one day the spirits and gods were scattered. The rebel against heaven, wanting high position. Journey to the West. Chapter 793. Insulted immortals, stole the pills, and destroyed morality. Today his terrible sins are being punished. Who knows when he will be able to rise again? When he had eliminated the monkey fiend, the Buddha told Ananda and Kajyapa to return with him to the western paradise. At that moment Tian Peng and Tian Yu hurried out of the Hall of Miraculous Mist to say, "We beg the Tathagata to wait a moment as the Jade Emperor's chariot is coming." The Buddha turned round and looked up, and an instant later he saw an 8-splendor imperial chariot, and a 9 shining jeweled canopy appear to the sound of strange and exquisite music, and the chanting of countless sacred verses. Precious flowers were scattered and incense was burned. The Jade Emperor went straight up to the Buddha and said, "We are deeply indebted to the great Buddha's powers for wiping out the demon, and we hope that the Tathagata will spend a day here so that we may invite all the immortals to a feast of thanksgiving." The Buddha did not dare refuse, so putting his hands together he replied, "This old monk only came here in obedience to your celestial majesty's command. What magic powers can I pretend to? This was all due to the wonderful good fortune of your celestial majesty and the other gods. How could I possibly allow you to thank me?" The Jade Emperor then ordered all the gods of the Department of Thunder to split up and invite the 3 pure ones, the 4 emperors, the 5 ancients, the 6 superintendents, the 7 main stars, the 8 points of the compass, the 9 bright shiners, the 10 chiefs, the 1,000 immortals, and the 10,000 sages to a banquet to thank the Buddha for his mercy. Then he ordered the 4 great heavenly teachers and the 9 heavenly maidens to open the golden gates of the Jade Capital and Palace of the Great Mystery, and the Tongying Jade Palace, invite the Tathagata to take his seat on the throne of the 7 precious things, arrange the places for all the different groups of guests, and set out the dragon liver, phoenix bone marrow, jade liquor, and magic peaches. Before long the original celestial Jade Pure One, the high celestial precious Pure One, the heavenly celestial Pure One of the Way, the true lords of the 5 humors, the star lords of the 5 constellations, the 3 officers, the 4 sages, the left assistant, the right support, the heavenly kings, Nezah, and the whole of space responded to the invitations that had been sent out magically. Their standards and canopies came 2 by 2 as they brought shining pearls, rare jewels, fruit of longevity, and exotic flowers, and presented them to the Buddha with bows. We thank the Tathagata for subduing the monkey fiend with his infinite powers. His celestial majesty has asked us all to come to his banquet to express our thanks. We beg the Tathagata to give this banquet a title. The Buddha accepted this commission and said, "Since you want a name for it, we could call it the banquet to celebrate peace in heaven." "Splendid, banquet to celebrate peace in heaven, splendid," exclaimed all the immortals with one voice, and then they all sat down in their places, put flowers in their hair, and played the lyre. It was indeed a splendid banquet, and here are some verses to prove it. Journey to the West. Chapter 794. The banquet to celebrate peace in heaven far surpasses the banquet of peaches that the monkey wrecked. Radiance shines from dragon flags and imperial chariots, auspicious vapors float above streamers and symbols of office. Melodious the fairy music and mysterious songs, loud sound the tones of phoenix flute, and pipe of jade the rarest of perfumes waft around the immortals, assembled calm in the sky, to congratulate the court on pacifying the universe. When the immortals were all enjoying the feast, the Queen Mother and a group of fairies, immortal beauties, and houris, floated through the air as they danced towards the Buddha, and after paying her respects the Queen Mother said, "My peach banquet was ruined by that monkey fiend, and this banquet to celebrate peace in heaven is being given because the Tathagata has used his great powers to chain down the evil monkey. Having nothing else with which to express my gratitude, I have picked a number of peaches of immortality with my own pure hands as an offering." They were half red, half green, sweet-smelling beauties growing every 10,000 years from immortal roots. The peaches of Wuling Yuan seem laughable, how can they compare with those of heaven? Purple-veined and tender, rare even in the sky, yellow-stoned, and matchless on earth for their sweetness. They are able to adapt the body and make it live forever. Those lucky enough to eat them are no ordinary beings. Journey to the West. Chapter 795. The Buddha put his hands together to thank the Queen Mother, who instructed the fairies and houris to sing and dance again, and their performance met with the praises of the whole assembly. Indeed, misty heavenly incense filled the room, a chaos of heavenly petals and flowers. Great is the splendor of the jade city and golden gates, priceless the strange treasures and rare jewels. 2 by 2, coeval with heaven, pair by pair, outliving 10,000 kalpas, even if land and sea changed places they would not be astonished or alarmed. Soon after the Queen Mother had ordered the fairies and houris to sing and dance, and when wine cups and chopsticks were weaving to and fro, suddenly a strange scent reached their noses, startling the stars and constellations in the hall. Immortals and the Buddha put down their cups, each of them raising their heads to look. An old man appeared in the middle of the Milky Way holding a sacred mushroom. His gourd contains 10,000-year elixir. On the sacred rolls his name is written eternal life. In his cave heaven and earth are free. Journey to the West. Chapter 796. In his bottle sun and moon were created. As he wanders around the 4 seas in pure idleness, taking his ease in the 10 continents, enjoying the bustle. When he went to peach banquets he often got drunk, but when he came round, the moon was as bright as ever. A long head, big ears and a short body, known as longevity from the southern pole. The star of longevity had arrived. When he had made his greetings to the Jade Emperor and the Buddha, he made a speech of thanks. When I heard that the monkey fiend had been taken by the Lord Lao Zi to his Tushita palace to be refined, I thought that this was bound to restore peace, he said, and I never expected he would rebel again. Happily the demon was quelled by the Tathagata, and so when I heard that this feast was being given to thank him I came at once. As I have nothing else to offer, I have brought with me purple magic mushrooms, jasper herbs, greenish jade lotus root, and golden pills of immortality. These I humbly present. The poem says, offering the jade lotus root and golden pills to Sakyamuni, to give him as many years as the grains of sand of the Ganges. Peace and eternal joy decorate the 3 vehicles, prosperity and eternal life make the 9 grades of immortals glorious. Within the gate of no phenomena the true law rules, above the heaven of nothingness is his immortal home. Heaven and earth both call him their ancestor, his golden body provides blessings and long life. The Buddha happily accepted his thanks, and after the star of longevity had taken his place the wine cups started to circulate once more. Then the barefoot immortal appeared, kowtowed to the Jade Emperor and Journey to the West. Chapter 797. Thanked the Buddha. I am deeply grateful to you for subduing the monkey fiend with your divine powers. As I have nothing else with which to express my respect, I offer you 2 magic pears and a number of fire dates. Sweet are the barefoot immortals' pears and dates, and long will be the life of the Buddha to whom they are offered. The lotus seat of the 7 treasures is as firm as a mountain, his 1,000 golden flower throne is as gorgeous as brocade. Coeval with heaven and earth, this is no lie, it is true that his blessings are greater than a flood. His western paradise of leisure and bliss truly provides all the long life and blessings one could hope. The Buddha thanked him too, and telling Ananda and Kajapa to collect together all the offerings, he went over to the Jade Emperor to thank him for the banquet. When all the guests were thoroughly drunk, the miraculous patrolling officer reported that the great sage had poked his head out. It doesn't matter, the Buddha said, producing from his sleeve a strip of paper, on which were written the golden words Om Mani Padme Hum. He gave this piece of paper to Ananda, and told him to stick it on the summit of the mountains. The venerable Ananda took it through the gates of heaven and pasted it firmly to a square boulder on the top of the 5 Elements mountain. When this was done, the mountain sank roots and joined up all its seams. The Monkey King was still able to breathe, and he could still stick his hands out and move them. Ananda went back to heaven and reported that he had pasted the paper in place. The Buddha then took his leave of the Jade Emperor and all the other deities. When he and his 2 disciples had gone out through the gates of heaven, his merciful heart moved him to chant a spell ordering a local tutelary god, and the revealers of the truth of the 5 regions to live on the mountain, and keep guard over him. When he was hungry they were to feed him iron pellets, and when he was thirsty they were to give him molten copper to drink. When the time of his punishment was over, someone would come and rescue him. Indeed, the monkey fiend was bold enough to rebel against heaven, but was subdued by the Tathagata's hand. Journey to the West. Chapter 798. He endures the months and years, drinking molten copper for his thirst, and blunts his hunger on iron pellets, serving his time. Suffering the blows of heaven, he undergoes torment, yet even in the bleakest time a happy fate awaits. If some hero is ready to struggle for him, 1 year he will go to the West in the service of the Buddha. Another poem goes. His great power grew as he humbled the mighty, he used his wicked talents to subdue tigers and dragons. He stole the peaches and wine as he wandered round heaven, was graciously given office in the jade capital. When his wickedness went too far his body suffered, but his roots of goodness were not severed, and his breath still rose. He will escape from the hand of the Buddha, and wait till the Tang produces a saintly monk. If you don't know in what month of what year his sufferings ended, listen to the explanation in the next installment.